Hello, hello. I have recently launched Manage Settings, a project I've been working on for some time with the goal of providing a limited configurable settings experience for locked down and dedicated devices. Now, plenty of EMM platforms offer something similar, and if you use one of those EMMs, you might think, well, what's the point of having something dedicated? This is intended for those platforms that do not. And as the proliferation of Android Management API based EMMs has taken hold over the last several months, a couple of years, this type of application has been more in demand than I think ever before. So if you're using an EMM platform and the native Android kiosk environment, you may be familiar with the screen on the left there showing the native Android launcher, or kiosk launcher, I should say. And the expectation is, if you need access to device settings, that you would make the device settings application available, just like this. Now, of course, you can lock down some settings based on the available APIs in the Android Management API. Stuff like factory resetting, setting device volume, several other configurations possible. But you can't necessarily lock down everything. There will be some aspects of device settings that we don't have control over overall through a MAPI that allow end users who have access to settings to do what they want with it. And that's obviously not good. So the alternative would be to pop into your EMM and turn off device settings via policy. Now, when that applies, you can't have access to settings at all whatsoever. And that has a similar issue in now users can't do anything. They wouldn't be able to access Wi-Fi or Bluetooth if they're using dedicated devices with connected peripherals and that bugs out. They wouldn't be able to go and reconnect that device via Bluetooth or any other means. And so you have what ends up being an increased load on support teams to go into these devices, remove the kiosk requirements, do whatever's necessary to return the device to a working state, and then pop back into the kiosk policy, which is not very efficient and not a good use of time. Now, you might think if you block access to settings through policy in the way I've just done there, that any application trying to access settings would be equally blocked. And this isn't actually the case. So with this API, specifically, you're blocking access to the settings app, but you don't block access to the individual intents that make up the settings application. And that's all really Android settings is a series of OEM provided or AOSP provided intents to different areas, different APKs within the system that provide means of configuring device settings. So as an example now, I can open Manage Settings, and you see I still provide a complete list of several intents for direct access into device settings. And if I click on one, like Wi-Fi, I still have access to it. Now, out of the box, I've provided access to as many intents as I think would be useful across a broad range of use cases. But of course, this can be configured. And just as a reminder, settings access is still blocked, but I can still go into each individual intent through Manage Settings to access the information I need. Now, as I said, it's very straightforward to configure Manage Settings to lock it down to what it needs to be. So if I go over to Manage Settings, click Edit, and go into my Manage Configuration, I can give it a name, Test 1. And then as you can see, all Manage Config intents are off by default. So if we saved it as is, in fact I will just save it as is. It will give us a completely locked down Manage Settings experience. Now obviously that's not useful necessarily. I mean, it could be if you wanted to keep it as an application that you temporarily provide access to settings for on an ongoing basis, you can obviously come in and edit the configuration as you need. But ideally, if you know for your use case that you're always going to need access to Wi-Fi, maybe you'll always need access to Bluetooth, and perhaps battery saver for devices that are used a lot that don't always get to charging stations in time, your end users can go into here and enable battery saving settings. There's a whole heap of things. Accessibility is a great one for remote control, for example. If you deploy your environment and you need to, after the fact, go into accessibility settings to grant remote control access to the device, you can do that here. Similarly, if you have work policy information or about device, if you need to go into these for debugging or support purposes, you're more than welcome to do so. Or the users would be more than welcome to do so if you provide access to this. And if I click save, you'll see on the left those intents then become available again. Now we can go a step further. So if we go into managed settings, we have an organization support message, available actions, and a little bit of custom branding that directs folks who don't necessarily using it within an organization to my website for additional project information. But if you wanted to, you can now come in here and give yourself a custom support message. All of this is included without any licensing or any requirements as is. So we can say hello, get, and then use a HTML tag to put emphasis on a word, support. Save that. And there you go. The organizational support message has been updated, and there is emphasis where you want to put emphasis. Now, because it supports HTML or basic HTML, you can use bold, italics. You can even provide links to resources if you'd like to. But you can go a step further, and you can say hi@email.me and provide end users with a direct means of contacting support. So if you click on this, obviously you'd need to deploy a mail application to allow for emails to be sent from the device. But if you wanted to support that, you could. Otherwise, it's just a handy text reference that end users can use when they're emailing support from another device. Now below that we have show feedback and Discord. These are again unmanaged cards that show up, so folks can get support and provide feedback and direction on the application as a whole if necessary. Again, as a managed config, it's automatically disabled because that's not going to necessarily be useful for the organizational's purpose. And then below this we have customization settings. So the app as an entire application is free. Everything you've seen so far works without any sort of license, and that's intentional to provide as much assistance and functionality really as possible as an ecosystem project. If you wanted to help and support the project, support additional projects that I'm working on financially, there are options for purchasing licenses both as an organization and as an MSP or vendor partner that will give a little bit back to me while allowing additional customization for your application within your organization or environment. So if I use a test license for organization ID, and I've gone with licensed organization ID as in the Android Enterprise organization ID that is typically assigned to an EMM. Obviously the license can be necessarily anything, but this seemed to be the nicest way for me to track usage of licenses. But there we go. So we'll add a license organization, and then I can do a couple other things. So I can add a custom app title, and then I'll save that, and while it's updating, hopefully on the left hand side we'll carry on. Then I can use either the default icon that you see here with a swirl, or there's a more generic icon that is just a settings icon with a little orange flare if that's preferable for visual aesthetic. And then finally, the bait and branding, which is this over here. If we turn this off, you should see again on the left, it all vanishes. Now, it just so happens that they updated at the same time because the internal app was pulling the manage config all at once. But they can be updated individually. Now you'll see when branding's gone, most of the branding is gone. I've still put a little co-branding logo there. If you're interested in complete white labeling, customized entirely to your organization with your own theme, colors, what have you, you're welcome to get in touch and we can discuss options. But that's how it stands today. Now the final, and I've left it here because it requires an app restart, the final option I provide is using the default icon. So if I click save on this, manage settings will close itself and then reopen. There you go. Perfect. So you can't see it here because the native kiosk takes a lot longer than the Android native launcher. But when you open, this is the icon you'll see both inside the app and on the home screen of the device. In fact, if I get out of kiosk, you'll see the app icon is updated on the home screen. In any case, this is manage settings as it stands today. I am working on additional functionality for licensed holders that will allow for custom intents both for the settings application and any other third-party app that you may want support for, and also some theming options and a few other bits and pieces that make the experience a little bit more customized to your organization and the organization brand. Either way, that's it from me. Hopefully you find this application useful and you can find a use for it within your environments. If you need any help or support, you can use the Manage Settings website to guide you off to the support documentation, which is down here. And also I have a Discord community as well as email support for licensed and unlicensed users accordingly. But there we are. Thank you very much, and get in touch if you want to discuss it.